thanks for coming and just let me share with you. I want to talk to you really about crisis leadership. And, what do leaders do well during a crisis? Because there are some marked characteristics that simple, every one of us can apply them to our life, but really do make a difference. And so let me make you just three crisis comments at the very beginning of our time. Number one is a crisis, it moves us. And what I mean by that is when something bad happens, it never leaves us the same. So the question is not, are we moving? In fact, every one of you, if I stopped right now, you could make a list of all the things that are different now in your life than were just a few weeks ago. So it's moving us around. The question is not, are we being moved by the crisis? We all are. The question is the movement that we have, is it a positive movement or is it a negative movement? That's the question. Am I doing better because of the movement I'm having, or am I doing less? And by the way, in the beginning, almost always the movement is negative because we're caught by surprise, we're unaware, people don't like to have to adjust their schedules. And so there's a whole bunch of reasons why it's negative, but in the beginning especially, it's very negative usually. We just we don't like what's happening to us. But it's during the crisis where we are right now, we're into this now a few weeks. It's during the crisis that we have to make a choice, a determination, and that is, am I going to continually go with the flow as I have been and be kind of swept away and with all the negative things that I'm thinking, feeling, emotions that I'm having, or am I going to swim upstream? And that's a choice that you and I get to make. We didn't get to make a choice on the crisis. And in the beginning, we just emotionally got caught up in it. But now we've been in it long enough. It's choice time. It's again, not the reality of the crisis. The reality of the crisis is it's terrible. The issue is, am I going to let what's happening to me affect what's happening within me? Or am I going to say, no, I don't like what's happening to me, but I can control what's happening in me. That's huge. So crisis moves us. The question is it moving forward or is it moving us backward? Number two, a crisis reveals who the real leaders are. Boy, that's a fact. Now, I want to give away my age. Of course, I'm 73, but there used to be a TV program a long time ago. Most of you don't remember this. And the program was To Tell the Truth. And it was basically a panel would face three people, and one of them would be the person that they were going to describe and tell the story of, and the other two would be pretenders. And so the panel was trying to figure out who was telling the truth and who was the real person. And I can still remember, because I love that show, that the panel would ask questions, and the people that were trying to pretend or maybe the real deal would give them answers. And the end, it would get kind of dramatic because they'd say, now, will the real, for example, will the real leader show up? And whoever was the real leader, they would stand up. And sometimes they would hit it, sometimes they would not guess it at all. Well, let me just say this. A crisis is playing that game with us right now. And a crisis is just simply asking, will the real leader please stand up? Because I can promise you, crisis separates pretenders from players. Always has, always will. And this is the time where this crisis reveals who I am as a person. It reveals who I am as a leader. It reveals who I am as a family member, a community member. It just reveals who I am. So a crisis moves us. I hope it's moving us in a forward, positive way instead of a negative way. I hope that's our choice, by the way. And a crisis reveals who we really are, who the real leaders are. And a crisis tests a leader's confidence. Nothing tests a leader's confidence like a crisis does. And the reason for that is we are in continual change all the time. And so we can't lead by the book. There isn't a leadership playbook to help us through the coronavirus right now. There's none. Change is happening continually. And that's why leader shifting, I wrote a book on leader shift, but that's why leader shifting is so important. That leader shifting is how to be agile, how to be adaptable. And this is the test of us. If we're able to have halftime adjustments like coaches do that make them very successful, the best ones always make halftime adjustments. They all have a pre-game plan, but only the great coaches at halftime say, look, here's what we thought, but this is what's happening, and we have to make our adjustments. So those three comments about a crisis, the fact that they move us, they reveal who we are, and they test our leadership, that's a fact.
But what are you noticing? Just so I know we got several points we want to get to, but just in a big picture, what is your overall, counsel to leaders when you're looking at 2023, 2024? Could be some real challenges out there.
Well, the first thing is to realize those feelings that people are having, that they're not alone. I can't emphasize that enough. Everyone I talk to, you're coaching a lot of people. I'm doing a lot of one-on-one mentoring. I have a lot of friends who are leaders. You are not alone right now if you're feeling isolated, if you're feeling a little bit scared about what's coming, because these are unprecedented times. And so what's interesting about human nature, we are hardwired genetically, whether you believe it, the Big Bang, or we're created by God, whatever your theory is, we are wired for safety. We try to avoid conflict and pain. So when we see and feel pain coming through inflation or layoffs coming, and you read it every day in the paper, it's natural to feel uneasy and uncertainty. And when the future is so uncertain, why do we as leaders feel like we should be certain?
Yeah, that's good.
We feel like we have to be transparent, and we should be, but the key thing is that we are adaptable, that we learn every day with what's going on. It's okay to change your plan. It's okay to adapt, but it's okay to feel uncertain right now.
You don't have to have all the answers.
No.
Yeah.
Not at all.
What?
Yeah, as a leader, you don't have all the answers.
But I'd also say, too, don't go it alone. I mean, you're not alone if you feel this way, but at least type A personalities, what I've seen is when things get complex and scary, they tend to double down. And introverts get more introverted. And I think what can happen is we go to a very lonely place. And leadership is lonely anyway. But I'll just give one example for me of an example of this. When 07-08 hit Hershey Enterprises, it's a theme park company, and our sales were down 35%. We had all this leverage because we had just purchased 2 companies. And we were up against our debt covenants where the bank might come in and say, hey, we're going to take over your loan, call your loan. You don't want that. We had to hit a certain number, and it was big. And I was taking it all on myself. And one of the greatest moments in my leadership life is I put it to my leadership team. I said, we have to find $100 million here, or we're gonna be in trouble. And I thought we had to lay off probably 20% of our people. My team came back a day later and they said, we can get to this figure if everybody takes X pay cut, we cut these projects, and we don't have to lay anybody off. And the whole Dollywood company, every leader agreed to take at least a 10% cut. The senior leaders a 25% cut voluntarily so that they wouldn't have to lay people off and we could hit our number. And my main point of all that is don't go it alone. And being transparent's okay. It creates trust. So
that is so good.
I love that story.
That is so good. Yeah. So not only that, but as a leader, the release you must have felt.
Oh my gosh.
The weight lifted off your shoulder. Then your ability to then even lead more effectively, to create, to take care of the people, which as you listen to Joel and you listen to our conversation last week in this episode, you can hear it through the principles of his leadership. And again, if you want more about that and just diving into his leadership and that, I just talk about his book, Love Works. Perry and I love the book. He's one of our thought leaders here at Maxwell Leadership. If you go to maxwellleadership.com in our store, we carry it there.
Thank you.
And there are other stories just like that, but that's really, the book is really about the principles that he has learned to lead through in that moment. So that was the first one, right? In thinking about in volatile times where we're at. The second one is you mentioned move fast.
Yeah.
And I love this because John says, things are faster than they've ever been, right? And here you are saying, okay, so things are going to be slowing down maybe in the economy, in the world, and people are scared. But as leaders, we need to be moving faster. Talk a little bit about this and unpack it for our audience.
If I've been through a number of crises as a CEO or just as a leader, and if I could pick one mistake I see most frequently is people don't move fast enough.
Interesting.
They think things are going to get better, and they don't have the courage, which we'll get to courage in a minute, but they don't move fast enough. And when cash is king, everyone right now really that's listening should look at their department, even their family, even their home life or their company. What can we cut that's not mission critical? How can we raise sales faster? What projects don't need to be done that we had on the docket? And that's on the expense side, but capital projects too, just all the new ideas or new software that you want to put in place. We have to reevaluate every single thing, and great leadership does that. So all those things are hard, and people don't want to do them. But no matter what you're leading, it's important to move fast.
That's interesting.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking of a call you and I were on, Chris, you and I were on last week where someone told us about that their, big deal they were going to do, and they had it almost signed, and then everybody reassessed and said, you know what, we're going to wait on that. And they pulled back from the commitments they had for some large land purchases and some large, investments, capital investments, and saying, just going to pause for a bit.
Perry, I'm glad you brought that point up, because when I say move fast, it doesn't mean to move fast to make action happen. It's to make the decision to preserve cash fast. Right. And a lot of times saying no to a deal or waiting for another year or two on that deal is the right decision right now.
Hey, podcast listeners. Do you have a clear plan for growth? Achieving big results most often does not require big life changes. Small improvements over time compound into big results. Download the Maxwell Leadership app. It's the new free app where our expert guides and John Maxwell help you pace your leadership journey and set a clear plan for your own personal growth. You can also find all sorts of resources on the Maxwell Leadership app, including this podcast, information on upcoming events, and much more. Just search Maxwell Leadership in your app store and download the app today.
Well, I don't know, we mentioned at the top, but Joel does run our executive circle. It's a CEO coaching, and it's got some lessons, but he also do one-on-one coaching and mentoring with these CEOs. And these lessons that we're discussing here, these 5, they're something they're interspersed throughout the 12-month program. And the second one, moving fast. Third one, I love the way this sounds, but it says, construct a plan with courage over comfort. Courage over comfort.
Yeah, when I talk about having a plan, it's basically what is the plan to address the crisis, whether it's don't do this deal, cut these expenses, and we have to communicate that over and over again. But at least in my experience, most leaders edge towards comfort. Because again, we're wired. We talked about genetic wiring.
Safety,
we want to avoid pain. We want safety. But if we move with courage to make the really difficult decisions and make them pretty quickly, then that's what people are looking for in their leaders. Is everyone sees the tough decisions that need to be made, so they want their leaders to do them. And I think that's really, really important. But it's also courage. When you make courageous decisions, it's not being reckless. It's not doing things that are ill-advised, but it's making those difficult decisions, whether it's a big price increase or laying off people. And again, people are looking for us to lead.
I know one of the things that you talk about when it comes to leading with courage is being transparent. With your story you gave a little while ago about your leadership team. Here's where we're at. But I think it's even further than that. I think to be a courageous leader, no matter what the times are, is to be transparently leading and communicating with clarity and other things to your team. Would you agree with that? Would you say that through the times that you've led through, when you were more transparent or authentic with your team, that was when you were able to kind of rally the troops and keep them together at a greater level?
Absolutely. It's such a great point, because transparency creates trust. And there's a balance. There's a balance between, they want their leader to be strong and know, kind of communicate what's coming, but you have to be honest. And the best example I can think of for that, for me, was at SeaWorld, when the animal activists were protesting our parks, and we, make a long story short, had to choose to stop breeding our marine mammals or orcas, which was not liked by a lot of the people inside the company. And I flew to each park and met with the animal trainers and had to look them in the eye and say, we're not going to breed anymore, and here's why. And by bringing them into that, they didn't like it, but they understood it. And they kind of said, if I was in your shoes, I would have to do the same thing. So being transparent and having that balance of when to share and when not to share. It's an art, but definitely err on the side of transparency.
I was wondering, it sounds kind of obvious. Most leaders say, yes, I definitely chose courage over comfort. But when you're mentoring C-level types, do they know? You said they tend to go more comfort. It's built into our natural wiring, but do they sense that, or do they need outside point of view? How does
they? At least for me, they tend to share it because leadership is very lonely. At least I have found it to be, especially the higher up, so to speak, you go in an organization. If they aren't a little bit that way, I get concerned about them. If they're a bull in the china shop and they're just running hard without kind of being attuned to their courage, then I get worried. I like the people who admit that they struggle a little bit with the comfort and moving away from it.
Well, we've hit on this a little bit throughout a couple of these discussions, but your fourth point here, leading during these type of times, is to communicate consistently.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about that and the importance of that when leading through volatile times.
Well, we talked about it a little bit on the last podcast, but for those who missed it, the difference between, or the importance of clarity, lack of clarity is cruelty, but there's a difference between clarity and certainty. And I think a lot of leaders, we want to be certain. We want to tell people there will be no more layoffs, or this recession is only going to be 3 months, or COVID's going to be over in a year. And so we try to be certain. We can't.
Right.
We are uncertain, and we cannot predict the future. So it's important to be clear, but not necessarily certain. The second point, though, is I have seen way too many people, and I've made this mistake, try to predict the future. And so I've seen so many mistakes in the layoff announcements where people will say, this is the last one, no more layoffs. And then they have to do it again, and they lose all credibility. I just saw the Amazon CEO, this is public information, he made that announcement that more layoffs were coming the next quarter. I think the way to do that is you communicate clearly what you know today. And you say, this is as far as we need to go today, but I cannot predict the future, so that you leave yourself some wiggle room.
That's really good.
But also to say we're gonna have a massive layoff next quarter, which he did, completely kills morale. So just deal with what you have today, and hopefully you only do that 1 or 2 times versus you come back with another layoff every other week, and it's a death by 1,000 cuts. That's the worst possible situation.
Sure. Number 5, as we start to wrap up, was be optimistic, even when you don't feel like it. Does that mean even when you're not optimistic?
Well,
be optimistic.
And I think the question then becomes, well, are you being completely honest?
Right.
And we talked about that balance.
Yep.
There are some things you shouldn't say to people. Because we're all fearful. We all have that uncertainty. What if inflation goes to 12%? What if this recession lasts 5 years? What if sales don't come back? But I think what we project, and when we talk to people, we can be honest, but we don't have to give them all the information or everything that we're afraid of. So that's a balance. But in general, we should be positive because everyone's watching. And if we aren't positive about the future, who will be.
Yeah.
So
we talk about that. Everyone's watching
all the time.
right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we just need to be aware of that. And we also talk about how leadership is contagious. And so to your point, you don't want to be over the top and have your head in the sand, but you also want to have some of that energy behind the optimism of it so that your people can rest in that or know that we're aware, we know we're in bad times, but we're on this team together, and you get that kind of camaraderie built together just by being optimistic.
And by having a plan. If you have a plan, and you've communicated it, and people know we'll get through this. And now that plan may change every other week, but it's just important to have that plan in place.
I love what you said. I'm going to go back to, as I wrap up here, and then I'll throw it to you, Perry. When you talked about under point number 4 about communicating consistently, I can remember, during the pandemic, the certain statements that would be made, and then a week later they would, in the same organizations, would be drastically changed, and then a week later they're drastically changed, and we're just like, all right, what do we believe here? Like versus saying, as of today, here's what we're doing. This is and then you kind of, just like you talked about with Amazon, like, not only are you going to lose productivity on those layoffs until the first quarter, but then what if it doesn't happen in the first quarter? You've lost maybe 60 days of productivity, and then now you're going to be telling a different story. So I love that, of thinking, hey, how do I stay in the moment? How do we be optimistic, and then just communicate consistently on what I know and what I can share? Because to your point, we're leaders. We're not telling you, hey, start opening up the books and let's start talking about everything. No. Joel said it's an art and it's a balance. And what I love about these conversations, and Perry mentioned it, is that Joel's heart is to help leaders and executives, C-suite leaders that are in a lonely place. And some of you are listening to this and going, man, that is a true statement, because leading is lonely at times. And so he's partnered with us, came along as one of our thought leaders, and wanted to start Executive Circle. If you're interested in being part of one of those groups and taking that 12-month journey with Joel, not only in a group of other executives, but one-on-one calls with Joel. And he was sharing with us just before we started this session, just the impact that he feels like he's able to connect with people and help them through certain situations, because what he's been blessed to go through, both positively and negatively. And so if you're interested in that, I'd love for you to go visit maxwellleadership.com/executive circle, and there's a form on there. You can fill that out. One of our team will follow back up with you with more details.
The first one is one that, to be honest with you, podcast family, I have been learning for the last 2 to 3 years, and I'm getting ready to grab a pen and take some notes, because, John, this idea of emotional capacity, and you talk about that in this book. Emotional capacity is having the ability to respond to adversity, to failure, to criticism, and even taking pressure in positive ways. So how do we act out on this? How do we do this?
Well, Mark, the quality of a high road leader is, and the chapter is entitled, that high road leaders develop emotional capacity. I think the key word is develop. In other words, this is a process. We don't start with a lot of emotional capacity. We have to develop it. It takes time. It takes a lot of intentionality, and that's what I want to do in the book. Of course, you're not supposed to have favorite chapters in a book, and there are 12 characteristics of a high road leader, but the emotional capacity chapter is truly one of my top, probably 3. And the reason for that is I think this is a real need for leaders. I think COVID showed that we're more fragile than we think we are, that people are. And I think before COVID, we thought we had some players that after COVID, we found out they were pretenders, and that they just didn't carry the weight that we thought that they would carry, the weight or the responsibility to really help the people during the difficult times. So in this chapter, I really try to get real practical, say, okay, how do you develop emotional capacity? And let me just say one other thing before I just dive into this to help all of our people on the podcast. When I talk about developing emotional capacity, when I was young, as a young leader, I had an idea or a thought that was not a good leadership thought. It was the best I could think. It was like youth. You have a lot of thoughts that some of them are good, some of them aren't. But when I started as a leader, I thought what would happen was that I would do hard things. I mean, because leadership's hard. I mean, it just is. It's not easy. And in fact, one of my early mentors said, John, there are no 2 good consecutive days in a leader's life. Great advice. A lot of truth to it. But I thought, I'll go in and I'll go knock all the hard stuff out. I'll just make hard decisions and I'll just go after it. And there'll be a time when I no longer have to deal with hard. It'll get less and it'll get easier. You know, it's kind of like, there'll be a time when I get on top of the mountain and now I got me a view and I can build me a home and I can, you know, just enjoy the fruit of my labor. And I had this idea that if I did the hard stuff, some easy stuff was coming. And what I want everybody to understand is that's so untrue. There's no truth to that at all. There's no truth to that at all. That there's no such thing as I did the hard stuff, I did the hard stuff, I did the hard stuff, and now I don't do any hard stuff at all. It's just everything comes my way and it's so easy. That is a total fallacy. In fact, what I discovered is that you do the hard things well so you can do harder things later. You can't do harder if you haven't done hard. So the increase of difficulty and challenge, it always increases as a leader develops his or her capacity and they really grow. So what I want to do is I'm going to help a person. What do I have to do to develop this emotional capacity? Because one more thought. What I have discovered is many leaders fail not because they don't have leadership knowledge. They fail because they don't have emotional capacity to handle the pressure. In other words, they truly lead well and they know how to lead and they have good leadership skills, but they haven't developed that emotional capacity that lets them stay in the game when the game isn't any fun or it's difficult. And so I'm going to give you get ready, podcast listeners. I'm just going to give you some quick thoughts. Obviously, when you get the book, this chapter is loaded with how to develop emotional capacity. But let me give you just a few, not all of them. And the first one I've already talked about, now I'm going to state it. If you want to develop emotional capacity, you just have to embrace this fact. Leadership is difficult. It's just difficult. There's nothing easy about it. I ask a lot of times because I do leadership, people come up to me and they tell me they want to be a leader. And whenever they tell me they want to be a leader, I always ask this question mark, why? Why do you want to be a leader? And sometimes, they'll say, oh my gosh, I like to lead. It's fun to be in charge. I'm the captain of my team, and I love leading. And if they're a little bit older, well, I want a good parking place, or I want a corner office, and they give you all this stuff, these frills and thrills of leadership. And I want to look at them, and I'm going to say, the parking place and the corner office, it's not worth it. Just trust me. Hey, about their 4th or 5th day of hard or very hard, you'll give all that stuff away. You say, here, you got my parking place. You got my parking place if you'll take care of this problem. Because the only problems we get as leaders are the hardest problems. Because problems have to be solved at the lowest level possible. So easy problems, where are they solved? They're not solved at the leader's life. They're solved down there, down at the bottom. And the same thing with decisions. The only things that work their way up to a leader are the hard things. Easy doesn't come to a leader. Easy gets settled at a low level. If it's easy, they don't need you. Somebody else has made that decision. In fact, they didn't even check with you. They've already moved on. So we have to accept the fact that leadership is difficult. And that's essential for us to carry emotional baggage. Because let me tell you what, if I don't accept that leadership is difficult, I'll think emotional baggage is a result of one of two things. Either I did something wrong and I'm not a good leader. That happens all the time. Oh my gosh, if I'd have made better decisions, I probably wouldn't feel this weight that I have. So we began to kind of go that route. And since I'm not a good leader, that's why I'm having to carry this extra weight. That's the first one. Or the second thing that happens is the fact is it gets to the place where we finally say, I quit. I no longer want to stay in the game. And people emotionally quit usually before they physically quit. And in fact, most people, they've already quit. They just haven't made it official yet. Now, so everybody knows I'm well known for me putting my arm up in the air and saying, everything worthwhile is uphill. And because that's just so true. It's such a great statement, and it really works, and people understand it. This is the average person's life, uphill. But this is not a visual of the leader's life. The leader's life is like that. The hill's higher. In fact, it's not a hill, it's a mountain. Leaders don't have as easy of a path as followers have. And you say, well, why is that, John? It's very simple, because leaders have to take people with them. The moment you take people from where they are to where they have to go, your life slows down. You're no longer running your life like you could run your life, because a lot of great leaders, they can really run far if they just did it themselves. But what do you have to wait on people? You have to go back and pick people up that didn't make it, that you turned your back for a moment. They already went down 1,000 feet. You got to go down and get them and bring them back. So if you accept the fact that leadership is very difficult, then when you have to carry some luggage or stuff with you, you won't complain about it, because this was kind of like you signed up for this. You signed up for this. And so that's number one.
Are you ready to elevate your leadership to new heights? Join the movement towards High Road Leadership with John C. Maxwell's latest book. In High Road Leadership, John explores the power of valuing all people, doing the right things for the right reasons, and placing others above personal agendas. Learn how to inspire positive change and bring people together in a world that divides. Order now and receive exclusive bonuses, including a keynote on High Road Leadership by John Maxwell himself, and a sneak peek into 3 impactful chapters. Take the first step towards becoming a High Road leader. Visit highroadleadershipbook.com to order your copy today.
The second thing I would talk about handling making and developing emotional capacity is make action your priority. Much of the emotional stuff we carry, we've never acted on. I know this for a fact. This is huge. This is going to help a lot of people. A lot of the stuff that we take with us, we don't need to have it. But because we haven't taken action on it, and because we have lived with it internally and had these self-talks and this internal battle with ourselves, we've made the problem bigger than the problem. In fact, what we've done is we've just said, instead of me carrying 2 bags, I like to have a couple more bags, because worry adds baggage and anxiety. And what I tell people all the time is, if you would just act upon what you fear, you would find that your fears aren't reliable. You'd find that your fears, most of the time, don't even come to pass. I mean, don't cross the bridge before you come to it. And don't burn the bridge after you crossed it. It's a bridge. But when you get there, you'll have the ability to go from one side to another. But so many times we're trying to work out problems before we get to the problem. Some people they want to clear the way. It's kind of like, when I drive, of course, you know me, I drive fast, dear Lord. And if there is like an SUV in front of me, I'm around it. I want to see the road. I want to see the road. I don't want trucks in front of me. I don't want SUVs in front of me. I want to see the road. And there's sometimes in leadership that we want to see so much of the road that we're adding this emotional baggage to ourselves instead of getting rid of it. Much of the emotional baggage we have, that we carry, is not reality at all. It's in our imagination. And what I tell people all the time, action is your best friend. You know what action will do? Action will tell you very quickly if your thinking was correct or incorrect. It just will. You go out and you act on it, and you'll thought, boy, I thought it was going to be like this way. It's not like that at all. Well, what happened? Action revealed to you what is truth. Action revealed to you what is reality. Without action, we just get buried with stuff until we can't. We're immobilized, and we're not immobilized because the load that we have to carry. We're immobilized because of the load we think we have to carry. And that's a big difference. The third thing I would say to our podcast people is, and this one's going to be, this is so real to me. I hope I can teach you well. Mark, anytime, because you know me well, anytime you can jump in, and many times when you finish what I say, it's better than what I would have said it, or when you finish a question that I started answering, it's better. So feel free to jump in. This one is very close to my heart because it really works well for me, but I do have a difficult time teaching it. It's not because it can't be taught. It's just because it's so much of who I am that sometimes if it's intuitively already who you are and it's so natural to how you think, it's hard to teach it. It's like the law of intuition, the law of timing. It's hard to teach. It's so subjective. But let me give it to you. You have to be your best friend. I don't know how to describe this in any way, but so I'm going to say it. But when I said, you're going to think I'm a narcissist or something. You're going to say, dear God, John, you need to go to a therapist this afternoon. I'm my best friend. And I find myself always encouraging myself. I do. Now, I don't even know how I got there. And that's what frustrates me, because if I'm going to tell you to be your best friend, I ought to have a 5-step process of how to become your best friend. But I'm my best friend. And you've mentioned before, I'm very comfortable in my own skin. I don't do battles that most people do battles with. Now, I think I'm my best friend because I grew up in a very good environment. I won the parent lottery. And so I'm very secure because, my mother gave me unconditional love, and my father was just an incredibly action, go-get-'em successful person. But I find myself after a hard day talking to myself. And I'm not saying be my best friend where I don't deal with reality or I don't deal with issues, because sometimes I have to go deal with an issue. But can I just say, if you've got to deal with a real issue in your life, you still want to be your best friend. You don't want to leave yourself behind and to go alone at it. I take me with me. I take me with me so I can talk to me, because the best, listen, the most important person you're going to listen to all day is you. And so I take me with me. And the reason I take me with me is I may need me, because I may be at a real difficult time and I may need to say to me, John, you can do this. It's okay. This too shall pass. Sometimes I need a counselor. Sometimes I need a cheerleader. Sometimes I need somebody to just say, I am your best friend, but you missed it here. So now my best friend encourages me to tell people I was wrong. But I take me with me, and it works. Now, I wouldn't take me with me if I wasn't my best friend. I would change me before I took me with me. If you take me with me and you're not your best friend, you're going to talk down to yourself, and you're going to beat yourself up, and you're going to have guilt trips that you're going to go through. And it's a terrible thing when you kill you. Because you got enough people on the outside shooting at you. You got enough people throwing the bricks. I mean, if you're leading people, you're visible. If you're visible, you got people taking shots at you all the time. That cannot be avoided. That's not the emotional baggage I'm talking about at all. That comes with the fact that leadership is difficult. The emotional baggage I'm talking about that you can lessen and not have to carry is the fact that if I carry me and I'm the best me that I carry, that load gets less. But if I carry me and I'm the worst me I can carry, and I'm a critic of myself, and I when I was in college, a book that was incredible, I had it in a psych class. I can still remember the title of the book, and I can still remember the author. The title of the book, this book would be totally out of print. I mean, we're talking, what are we talking about? We're talking almost 60 years ago. The book was called Your Inner Child of the Past, and it was written by a guy named Dr. Misseldine. And your inner child of the past basically says what you had in your childhood comes back to play in your adulthood. And the quicker you realize this and you deal with this, the quicker you'll better yourself and heal yourself. I think that is very true. I think we act out as adults what we went through as children. And so to be your best friend, if you had, I don't mean this unkind, if you had parents that were critical, demanding, controlling, it's hard to be your best friend. I remember somebody was very precious to me, but her self-image was very low. She didn't have self-worth. She had controlling parents. She grew up in a legalistic background. And I remember sitting down with her, just the two of us, and I would get right in front of her and I would look at her and I would call her by name and I would talk about all the good things I saw in her. and all the things that made her precious and special and beautiful. And I kid you not, she'd just weep. She'd just cry. She was washing away all that stuff that she had as a child. Now, I'm not a psychologist, psychiatrist. I'm not a therapist. I just am a friend and do my best. But I'm sure not. I mean, somebody else could have helped her a lot more than I could have helped her. But I literally watched her sit there and just the stuff come out of her that was within her. And I just say to you, be your best friend. And when you fail, admit the failure, but be your best friend. I mean, okay, you failed, but is this the end? No. You know, to use a biblical principle, David, this great king of Israel, it said that David had a lot of enemies, and he was a warrior king, and he did battle all the time, and he had a lot of stuff on his plate. And the Bible says that David encouraged himself in the Lord. I'm David. I can encourage myself in the Lord. And by the way, because I can encourage me, guess what I can do for you? I can do the same thing. But I can't do that well for you if I've not dealt with that. So I don't know if I'm teaching it well, Mark. I'm just talking. But be your best friend. If you could just be your best friend. I don't know. When I get done with this, I think, oh, crap, I don't think I helped anybody.
No, let me tell you how you helped me. Because, John, many leaders, in fact, you would be able to say, we could have the rest of our session be a counseling session with how you've had to help me. Most leaders wear a badge of honor when they say, I'm my own worst critic. And what you've done, while you said, quote unquote, you don't know if you're teaching us, you are teaching a way that most leaders are not familiar with. Your most unique characteristic is being comfortable in your own skin. The reason you can be uncomfortable in your own skin is because you're your best friend. And that, when you said that while you were studying and writing for this book on high road leadership, it was the first time I heard you say it. You will remember you came off stage and said, I don't think I've ever said that before. And I said, I don't think you have either, but it is absolutely the truth. You are your own best friend. And so while you say, maybe I didn't teach you, what you did was show us there is a better way to view ourselves leaders than what most of us do. Because I promise you, John, most of the people listening to this podcast relate with me when I say I've wore a badge of honor before when I say I'm my own worst critic. You're not going to find something before me that I've not already recognized in myself that's wrong and tried to fix it. So, podcast listeners, I want you to soak in what John just said and to truly, authentically look yourself in the mirror and say, am I my own worst critic or my own best friend? Because, John, you showed us a better way. I want to hit one more thing because I want you to talk about chapter 7 before we run out of time. But before I go there, it was also in studying this book that John brought the idea of doing hard things first. Why do we do hard things so that we can do harder things? You know, most of us as leaders, we were taught in leadership, do the hard things first so you can coast after you get the hard things out of the way. And John, when you blew my mind, and I want to underline this, underscore it, highlight it, we don't do hard things so that we can get done with them. We do hard things so we are prepared to do harder things. And then the other thing, John, that you said is you said, we used to do hard things fast so we could relax. We don't do hard things fast so that we can get done with them. We do hard things fast so we can hurry up and learn the lesson to take on the real challenge we were created for. Because this was epiphany for me, because most of my life I've spent my time trying to pay the price so I could enjoy the reward. That's not true. We pay the price so we can take on a greater assignment. And I just love this teaching, John.
Well, and what it does, Mark, is it honestly makes people a greater leader. Because during the most difficult, dark times, the only leaders that will help the people are leaders that have developed emotional capacity, because everybody else has left the game. And so when we say that I do hard things so I can do harder things, I want people to also understand I do hard things without that being hard on me. Don't miss this. Now, why is it not hard on me? Because I've done hard things before. It's not the first hard thing I've done. See, let me tell you, the hardest things I did as a leader was when I was a young leader and I did them for the first time because I didn't know what to expect. And kind of, I look back and they were just little teeny weeny little things. They weren't hard at all. They were little nuggets. You know what I'm saying? But I did them. But because I did them, I could do something just a little bit bigger, just a little bit bigger. So in my life, I'm 77. I'm still dealing with harder things. But that doesn't bother me. In fact, it challenges me because now I say, well, I can do that. I get frustrated if I'm out of my league. That's why I tell people, don't go to the next level, grow to the next level. You don't go through hard things, grow through hard things. If you grow through hard things, it prepares you character-wise to deal with a harder thing. So when I hear leaders who are unhappy with difficulty and frustrated with problems, I sit there and I say, you've never really learned to grow through them and understand the value that they have to you. One more thing. We may not get to the last chapter, Mark, but it's okay. Aren't the people going to buy the book?
They're going to buy the book anyway. We don't have to.
Are you going to buy the book? I mean, do we need to dump everything? I mean, I know we're Mr. Podcast add value to everybody, but good Lord. I mean, pick up the book and add a little value to yourself, because I think we're onto something. I think we're onto something that is just very vital and very essential. If you don't carry emotional baggage with you, you have strength to handle the real stuff. But if you carry a lot of emotional luggage, you can't take on big boys or big stuff because you don't have any more energy. You've been lugging those suitcases around with you for so long that you're already worn out when you get to the meeting. And so, people say travel light, travel fast. I say travel light, travel far. There's a difference. Speed doesn't really, fast isn't bad. I like fast too. I'm not opposed to fast, but I'm not doing this so I can be faster. I'm doing this so I can go farther. And the great gravitas, Mark, of leaders, the gravitas of great leaders. When you're around a great leader, you just sense strength from him. You sense moral authority from him. You sense security from him. All this stuff comes on you and you're feeling it. And you say, why do I feel it in that person? It's because that's who the person is. They're not trying to fool you. They're not trying to fake it. They're in the midst of major, heavy stuff, and they're doing very well. They're doing very well because they've been in the midst of major, heavy stuff before. They've been tried. They've been proven. They're trusted. And so the big stuff, instead of throwing them or them saying, I want to get rid of it as fast as I can, it's very challenging to it. They kind of say, yeah, I'd like to tackle that. And they always know this. They haven't gone that far before, but because, don't miss this. They haven't gone that far before, but because they've gone far, they can go farther. They don't know how far they can go, but they're not afraid of trying, because they've developed this capacity to get to where they want to go. It goes back to what you hear me say all the time, Mark. There's always an answer. There's always another answer, and there's always a better answer. There just is. And if somebody comes and said, okay, what's the answer? I'd say, I don't know right now. Well, they said, then you don't know that. No. I know there's an answer. There's a difference between I know there's an answer, but I don't know what the answer is, than living the life of there's no answer. That's all. Those worlds are very far apart. So if people say, spell it out now, I can't spell it out now. I don't need to spell it out now. When I get to it, I'll be able to spell it out. Again, don't carry stuff that you don't have to carry until tomorrow. Just carry today's weight, whatever that is. Live in the moment. Because if you live in the moment and you carry what you need to carry today, you will have strength to carry what you need tomorrow. But you can't take yesterday's guilt and tomorrow's problems and stick them on you and then carry today's weight and do well. You just can't do that. And so, I would hope for all of our podcast listeners that they'll get rid of yesterday's guilt. You say, well, I see a problem coming. Is it here? No, well then it'll get to you. Don't worry. It'll get to you. You don't have to run ahead. You don't have to run ahead. Your name's not Scout. Just stay where you are. Confidence is not knowing about tomorrow. Confidence is feeling confident about today. And that's what I want. That's what I want for you, Mark, as I mentor you. That's what I want for all of our podcast people. You don't have to tell me how great you're going to be tomorrow. Just have the greatness for today that you need to, because if you're good today, tomorrow you're going to be good too. It's just a matter of time.
Things leaders do to win. And all you had to put in there was win. Like, I'm in. Like, what do we need to do? That competitive side comes out. And so things that leaders do to win, that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do, I want to encourage you to visit maxwellleadership.com/podcast. If you'll click on this podcast, fill out a form, we'll come help your team win.
That's right.
We're ready. And so whether it's
We're winners.
We are winners. Yeah. Before we get started, if you want to do that, and we can come and help with the 5 levels of leadership, the new training that we have around new kind of diversity, which we're retitling, by the way, to leading multi-generational teams, whether it's conflict management, whatever it might be, to help you win, we want to be able to do that. Well, in John's 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, he talks about the law of victory. Leaders find a way for the team to win. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, so I've been teaching this. I did a 21 laws course recently, and I noticed the leaders in the class, when we talk about the law of victory, it's kind of a, I got that, we're going to win. But then I reflected on myself, and I said, I'd have to say it's not something, I like to win. I'm willing to do what it takes to win. I work hard to try and win, but I don't really think of, as a leader, what are the things you need to be doing to put your team in the best place to win? And there's been a lot of change. A lot's been going on in the environment. So many of the people, the clients we're working with, are going through incredible changes in dynamics in marketplaces and industries, and challenges that we're facing on many fronts. And the pressure's on. And a lot of these great leaders, if they're at their best, they said, whatever is inside of you when you get squeezed comes out. And I just want to say, are we putting the best in us? Are we setting ourselves up for the best chance to win? And I think it's something that's often overlooked, so I decided to take it on as a topic.
Yeah, and I love the focus on the team winning, not just the leader winning.
Oh, yeah.
Right? The law of victory. And so I think that's key, because, by the way, when the team wins, you will win. Too many leaders that we've worked with and we've seen out there, that may not be the case. And so while you win in the short term, that won't be long term for you if we're not doing it in and through the team. And so one of the things I want to talk about, as you were just saying, is as a leader, what type of thoughts and leadership learnings are you putting in your head and on your heart, developing yourself in the role that you're in? What does that look like? And I think so much, and I've learned a lot about this over the last maybe 5 years or so, about the mindset. Your thoughts are going to dictate your reality to some extent. There is a tie between the two of them. And so I would challenge us to say, man, do you have those winning thoughts for you and for your team? And what does that look like? And are you getting yourself to the point where when opportunities show up, you're ready and you've done the preparation? And I also think that those that like to win and are victorious leaders, you and I talk a lot about sports, and we can think about some great examples of what that looks like, have one thing in common, is that, man, they will not accept defeat, no matter what that looks like. And what I thought about when I read that statement was, it reminds me of John. Whenever there's a problem or there's a challenge or what we're thinking about, he always says, well, there is an answer. Somewhere,
That's right.
someone has an answer to that. We just got to figure out what that is. And let's not stop
There is an answer.
until we become victorious, until we figure that out. And so some people are like, oh, yeah, well, there's no answer to that. We're out. Or we can't do that. No, that's not the case. You got to have the right mindset. You got to understand that there is always an answer. And a lot of these leaders, they just don't accept the fact that there's not an answer, and we just need to keep that in mind.
You and I were talking off camera about some sports we watched this weekend, and that when adversity, with a quote I'd read, was that when a real competitor somebody that's set up to win. When they face adversity, it becomes fuel to overcome it, to win. But if adversity drives you to making excuses, then that's what that defines a quitter. A quitter uses adversity as an excuse to stop. A winner, somebody going to go for victory, uses adversity as a propulsion to win. And we watched one of these athletes that had every excuse in the world to not compete, but he said, how'd you phrase that? I refuse to not win.
Yeah.
I refuse to go over to it. So when you think about the law of victory, John has a couple of teaching, maybe 3 components that he mentions in that. And I really like these. View your team's dedication to victory. And the first one was a unity of vision. He says teams succeed only when the players have a unified vision. No matter how much talent or potential there is, doesn't matter if you don't have a unified vision. And so my question I'd place for you was, how do you as a leader ensure the team or the players have a unified vision? It kind of sounds, we're all on the same page, but is it that easy?
It is not that easy. You can think about, let's stay on the sports topic for just a minute. You think about some big-time college programs, a guy that just retired, thankfully for us Georgia fans, and you think about the talent and the different types of people that players that he would bring in year after year, and yet there was one consistency, which was his voice on what we're going to do, what the vision is of that. And so we need to make sure, and he owned it, right? I think so. What we're trying to communicate here is, man, we really want for each of you to take ownership of what that vision is. You got to own it here first before you can communicate it out to the team. And then we want to encourage our team to own it, right? And if not, then there's other conversations that you might need to have. I have this little phrase that I use when it comes to the whole team and the vision, and times where I say, we need to make sure we have individual responsibility, because you're there for a reason, you have KPIs, but we need to have collective pride, right? Individual responsibility and collective pride. And I think in order to continue to do this with the vision, we need to communicate it clearly, and we need to make sure that it's compelling. I've had some leaders that I've worked with, you probably as well, we're like, hey, what's the vision of your team or the organization? And they get done, you're like, what? Right? Like, you don't even seem like you're compelled by that. Right. So when you have that unity of the vision, make sure you're communicated in a clear way and a way that's compelling to those that are on the team.
How frequent is this
often?
Yeah. Okay.
You can't do it enough.
Yeah, because I think that was one of my problems was I gave my vision at the January kickoff and said they got it. Guess what? They don't got it.
Yeah, yeah. I'll give you an example. So we're a couple months into 2024 as we're recording this, and I have a team meeting every Monday, and we start the meeting. Here's the vision, and we did it this morning.
Right, and
then our values.
Yeah, values.
And I actually asked Susan Davis, one of our facilitators, was in the meeting with us. I said, "Hey, Susan, I know you were on the road serving 3 different clients last week. Pick one of those values and give me an example why." And so she brought it to life. Yeah. So you can't do it too much. You need to keep it in front of yourself and the team often.
Good answer. John also says number 2. So you have unity of vision. You must have diversity of skills. And he points out, can you imagine an entire hockey team that was only goalies, or a business where there was only salespeople? It doesn't make sense. You need to have a diversity of that, and every organization requires diverse talents and skills to succeed. Do you think this is a problem in the workplace today, or do leaders build teams with the people that are a lot like them, the leader, and miss out on the diversity of not only diversity of people but diversity of skills, tasks, talents? What's your thoughts?
Capital letters, yes. Right? Exclamation points. You bring up a really good point, right? We attract who we are oftentimes versus what we really need on a team or what we want on a team. And so oftentimes that we will default to that. And so 100% I think we can do a better job of diversifying our team. One of the things I'd love for you to talk about as I throw it back to you is we just, maybe a year or so ago, we had a client where we helped develop a course called Inclusive Leadership, because we need to continue to get more diverse on our teams. There's no doubt about that. But we also need to understand that in that diversity, we don't need to squelch it. We need to understand, how do we inclusively lead all of that diversity. So talk just a little bit about that course, because it's a powerful training for teams.
Well, a big learning for me was that, and I'm a little embarrassed that I would develop teams, and we have a like me bias that's just part of it. It's easier to get along with people that are like you. It's easier, like you said, to attract people that are like you. We kind of fit into each other and all that, but that is no way to win, because we all think the same. And if we all think the same, a lot of us aren't necessary. So we need different thinking, different backgrounds, different experiences. And a lot of this different thinking is what adds to our richness of how we go to market. But the problem, and what we uncovered with learning about the I in DEI, about inclusiveness, is that even if you hire the most diverse team possible, you have a lot of people that aren't like you. They bring diverse thoughts, background, experiences, skills, but they feel excluded, or they don't feel like they belong, or they don't feel welcome. They don't feel psychologically safe. They will, the word is, assimilate to be like you, because it's not safe to be different than you. So I'll just be like you, and I tell them it's salute and stay mute. They'll just go along, and you lose everything that you built. So 2 ways to get diversity of skill is, to have a non-diversity of skills is, one, to hire it and then treat them exclusively so they don't participate, or just to hire a bunch of people like you. So the big aha for me about when you're an inclusive leader, people feel welcome, safe, valued, and the big word, they feel like they belong. And when they do that, it gives them a psychological safety to not fit in, be what you want, but to belong, to be who they really are.
That's good.
And if you show up who you really are, then you feel safe to tell me what you really think and how you can really add value. And now we can go to market in a really strong way. So.
And leaders, oftentimes, we're completely, off kind of where we're going, but it's so true. And oftentimes as leaders, we say, again, we're talking about things leaders need to do to win. And as we look through this with the diversity of skill, we know we need it, and we may even have enough growth to where we go, okay, I know I'm going to attract who I am, but that's not what I need. So we find the right time, and then they join the team. And to your point, they change them, and then all of a sudden now they squelch them. They don't feel like they belong. You're not going to get the best out of them. And I promise you the team won't win if you don't understand how to do that.
Hey, podcast listeners. Many of you listening right now would probably love the autonomy that comes with owning your own business or becoming a coach that helps other businesses succeed. Well, we have a phenomenal strategy where you are 100% in control of your own business, earning income on your own terms, and have access to the people, tools, and resources you need to build a thriving leadership development business. When you become a Maxwell Leadership Certified Team member, you join a global community of entrepreneurs led by our expert team of mentors and faculty, including John C. Maxwell. You'll also get one of the top leadership certifications in the world next to your name, giving you the boost you need to get started. Visit us online at maxwellleadership.com/join the team to find out more.
Number 3 from John, after diversity of skills and unity of vision, was raising players to their potential. That leaders that win not only see potential in others, but they invest in developing potential in others. This is in our sweet spot here, but
100%.
Always telling leaders about what are you doing not only to develop yourself, but to develop your team.
Yeah, this does not happen by accident. We have to be intentional about it. And I think this comparison that I wrote down as I was thinking about, wow, what are some of the leaders that I've seen in the past that I've admired, that I've seen win continuously over and over again, is that they do have this, let me develop them as an individual and then empower them to run. Not, although we need this, not train them and then delegate to them. That is a massive difference, between those two statements right there. And I think if you're going to win repetitively, you got to get into the place of how am I developing and then empowering versus just training and then delegating tasks to them.
So last comment, maybe you give us a thought on it, but so we have this, we want unity of vision and we have diversity of skills. That diversity can be differences in people. Is it the idea of bringing them together, that diversity of skill and outlook and backgrounds and all that, bringing that together under a unity of vision doesn't seem like an automatic thing. It seems like it might be a little bit of an uphill. Any coaching thoughts on, if you're a leader, if you have this rich diversity, how do you bring them into focus as one?
Well, that I think is your job, no doubt. That's your number one job. You want the team to win. You want the team to exceed its expectations. You got to figure that out and what that might look like. There's many things that come to mind, tools that we use. The values cards are one. I also think that there is common ground somewhere. There is a common ground somewhere in that group that you can find.
Yeah.
And I think the more that you can, as a team, get to know each other on a personal level and bring those walls down. And we talk about this often, where we'll do, with an executive leadership team, we'll do a simple values card exercise. Men and women that have worked together for 15 years. And they walk out and they go, man, Perry, I had no idea that this happened. This is why that's important to you. And so there are things that you can do at a much deeper level than, just team building, jumping off high ropes and all that stuff. All that would be fun. And you could do that. I absolutely think that is your number one goal. You should continually be thinking about, how do I make this team work more effectively together?
Right. I love that. And everyone seeing each other, even though we're different, we see each other as one, and we see each other as valued and belonging. Everybody belongs here in this team to do that. So
we have this thing that we've learned from another leader that talks about sharing your personal, your professional, and your financial goals, whatever the conversation might be with. And the more that you learn about them and you develop common language inside that team and understand each other, then you're gonna drive that to a different level.
We also a while back did the Change Your World value table.
Yeah, which is awesome.
That was like one hour a week for 6 weeks. But boy, we came out of that as a different group.
Yeah.
Even though we have a lot of different backgrounds on our team. But I recall, I think first week going, what in the world are we doing? By about week 3 going, my goodness.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah, what have I learned about these people? This is amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think anything like that has some type of substance to it is beneficial. Well, as we wrap up, the first step in practicing the law of victory is taking responsibility for the success of the team, department, or organization that you lead. It must become personal. Like, I think about that. Like, I want our team, I want the team that I'm a part of to succeed. And what does that look like? And how do I go about doing that? What do I need to do? To your point in that last question, how do I need to bring them together? What are some things that need to happen? And what do I need to share, or they need to share with each other? And so some things I wrote down here as a wrap up is, man, make sure that as you think about things that we need to do and that we covered in the 3 principles, make sure that you're leading by example. Make sure you're taking responsibility. Leadership is contagious, and so that they see those things in you. Make sure you're communicating effectively. And then I want to encourage you, as you guys get small wins along the way. This is one of the things that I love to do is to recognize and show appreciation to the individual, but bring the team in on that.
That's really good.
Right? Mm-hmm. So that we're not just, hey, Perry, good job over here, but like we're talking about as a team, man, the team won today because Perry hit his KPIs here, and you kind of just combine the two of them. And when you do that, one of the things I think it'll do is it'll begin to create slowly a culture of success. It's like, this is what we do here.
Culture of victory.
Culture of victory, right? Like, we're going to figure it out. There is an answer. We're going to, Mark Cole, our CEO, says often, like, I may not accomplish it, but when you find my dead body, it'll be pointed in that direction, right? Like, that's the mentality that we have and we need to create in our team.
I am excited to be here and talk about this because I hope it is going to free up some people who are maybe stuck in the decision-making process because they feel like they have to make a great decision right off the bat, Mark, because what John said and what freed me so long ago, and I hope that you all heard it. And it was, I used to think that you had to make a great decision. And what John is teaching us today, and what we're going to hopefully break down, is that it isn't so much as making a great decision, but it's managing a decision made, a good decision made makes it become a great decision. It's how you manage that decision. And that is all the difference in the world, because I think we have so many friends. I know so many people on my team are that perfectionist mindset. And with good reason, we want to steward what we are tasked with stewarding as leaders well and with excellence. And so we sometimes that can freeze us up, though, from making a good decision. And so just right off the bat, full honesty, Mark, I'm just curious, would you say that you have always been a good decision maker, like a fast, early decision maker, or is that something that you had to grow into with age and learning through making some bad, clunky decisions?
Yeah, I wish there was a universal answer to give to you, because in some areas I'm extremely fast and I make decisions that people go, whoa, don't you need a little more context? I'm going, no, I got everything that I need.
Right.
There's others that they keep coming back and giving me the same context over and over again as if I didn't hear it the last time. Yeah. And what they're really saying is, let me tell you again what I told you last time so you'll hurry up and make a decision, right? So I do wish, Tracy, that I had this universal, yes, I'm a great decision maker, or no, I'm an incredible processor, but when I make a decision, it's a great one. In actuality, it's somewhere in that tension that we probably all find ourselves here as we listen today. I have found, to your question though, Tracy, I have found in my areas of strength, I'm a relational leader. In my areas of competence, I have some abilities to really see math and see some opportunities. In the areas of my strengths and in my giftings, I'm a lot faster because I've developed an intuition. And let me say this right here. It's not only that I've developed an intuition, I have developed a security. I'm comfortable in my skin in the areas of my strength and weakness. And I know that if I make a bad decision, I have recovered from bad decisions in that area before. Practically, it's when I take on a new task or a new responsibility or a new group of people to lead that I start slowing down. What am I missing? What else do I need to learn before I make a decision? So I feel like I am fast when it comes to organizational decisions. I feel like I am slow when those organizational decisions impact people that I love, that I appreciate, that I want the best for. And I think that comes back to being a relational leader. I slow down when a decision I'm going to make negatively impacts another human being.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you process through on your own, or you process that through with your inner circle?
Yeah, so I'll never forget, you perhaps have heard me talk about this on the podcast. Before the podcast ever started, I think John gave me the greatest leadership mentoring that he's ever given me. And it was on this concept of, Mark, you need to make a choice. Do you want to lead or do you want to be loved? And I was like, of course I want both.
Both.
Now, what's the next question, John? What's the next question? Both. And he's going, no. There's some situations or sometimes or some circumstances you can't choose both. Which is going to be the highest priority at this season in your life? For years, I got away with, whether consciously or unconsciously, I got away with people were my first choice. But when I became CEO, which was back in the early 2010s, 2010, 2011, what John was really saying, to be an organizational leader to where people follow you, level 3 of the 5 levels of leadership. People follow you because of what you've done for the organization. For those of you that are not familiar with the 5 levels of content, level 1 is the position level. People follow you because they have to. Level 2 is the relationship level. People follow you because they want to. Number 3, the production level, is people follow you because they get to, because they have watched you do something great. And what I found in my CEO world is I had not found a niche in people following me because of what I'd done for the organization. So John went down this route, and of course it is both, Tracy, you and I are both very relational leaders. But I have found over and over and over again, there comes a time to where you have a first filter that you have to make a good decision with, and then you make it a great decision by helping people understand the context after the decision is made. Here's what I was trying to do before. I would try to go get a sense of unity, camaraderie, and buy-in before I would make the decision. And John's saying you can't do that. Vision separates. It does not unify, ever. When you set a clear vision, some people are going to opt out. I don't think I'm up for that.
Right.
And I kept thinking when I cast vision or direction that I needed everybody to go with me. And John said that's the worst thing that could happen for a leader is the dead weight, the laggers going with you when you're trying to go somewhere. And so it was good, Tracy, to come back. And I made a good decision to say I want to lead during this next season as a first filter. And I want to continue to be in love because it gave me a first filter dimension that I had not had before that. And I still used my people skills, people abilities to then get people on board with that decision once it was made.
Mm-hmm. And that's right in line with, he talks about two possibilities in making a good decision. He talks about how we manage it. We can manage it incorrectly and have average results. And that's the difference between the average and the great results when we manage it correctly. Now, what you just talked about was the managing of a situation ahead of things and seeing something more and before, like what John talks about. And, casting the vision and it becoming people decide which side they're on. But what about managing, before we even get to John's prioritizing decision-making and what that means? What about managing? Talk a little bit about what that means when you manage between average and great. How you manage when there's an error or a blunder that's been made as a leader. Because I think a lot of leaders side on the side of average because they are afraid to manage through a mess up, a blunder, or an error.
Yeah, there's three things that come to mind as I think about that. And by the way, this is going to apply to your question. How do you manage a good decision into a great decision? It's also how do you manage a good decision that turned bad?
Right.
Because I think it's both.
Way to say that way more succinctly than me.
Yeah. I think as a leader, we have to really be truthful that we've made some good decisions to manage them to great, and they turned out bad, even though we managed them well. They were just bad decisions.
Right.
I think there's three components to managing a decision from good to great or from good to bad. I think number one is owning the decision. We talked about it. It is my decision to make. I call the balls and strikes. I called a strike, swing away. I called a ball, I called a bunt, and everybody was charging in baseball, and I just missed the timing of that call. I think you have to own it and not waver. And I've watched too many leaders make a decision, and the next day, you couldn't tell if they really made the decision or not. Be unwavering. You made a decision. Your team will rally to your decision, good or bad, because people want strong, effective leadership. Now, so ownership, own the decision. A good decision going to great, a good decision going to bad, own the decision. This was my decision. Number two, deflect praise for the good decision going to great and accept responsibility on good decision going bad. The leader should not get any credit for a good decision going great, the team should. And a leader should own all the responsibility when a good decision turns into a bad decision or a bad reality. So ownership, but then take people with you. In other words, let them feel the joy or let them feel the disappointment. I just recently stood up in our State of Culture at the beginning of 2024. I stood up, I think you were there, Tracy.
I was.
And I said, guys, gals, I got to tell you something. I really did not lead well in 2023. I didn't lead with good communication. I didn't lead with great decision-making. The decision-making from 2020, 21, and 22 caught up with us in 2023. I want you to know I am aware I made good decisions that turned bad, and I want you to know I'm responsible. And then here comes the second thing. Apologize. Apologize. And I looked at as many people as I could. I even said it. I wish I could see every one of you on Zoom right now. I want to look you deep in the eyes, and I want you to feel a heartfelt apology from me. Too many leaders wait for somebody else to point out they made a bad decision rather than owning it and stating it before everybody else does. By the way, they're already thinking it. They're glad you finally know it. And then apologizing. The third thing that I would say is managing a decision to good, a good decision to great or a good decision to bad stays in the follow through. Too many leaders make a decision and leave it, wash their hands from it, and never follow back up. And that gets repeated gets done. We know that from a vision teachings that we've all done. That gets managed gets reported. We know that from an accountability teaching that we've done. But I will tell you, a decision going from good to something, good or bad, great or bad, is all about staying with that decision and being involved with it all the way through.
I just have to say, we're going to get right into how John talks about prioritizing decision making and what that looks like. But I have to say, what you did in that State of the Culture meeting was exactly the quote that John gave by Peter Drucker, and that is, when you see a successful business, someone made a courageous decision. And apologizing and owning something that a mismanaging or a bad decision or anything, it's a reset of sorts. And I think leaders are so afraid of that they hide from it, and it actually does worse damage. That when you come forward and you say, this is exactly what I see, and this is where it went wrong, and this is what I will do to change it, and I apologize for that, it is a complete reset, because it gives such confidence to people when they hear a leader say, this is what I see, this is what happened, and this is what we're going to do to change it. What more could you want from a person? Because that's solid leadership, is when someone can step forward. I was applauding you. I was one of the people on Zoom. I felt like you were looking at me through the camera. Anyway, I just wanted to say that to a leader who needs to say something to their team. Your team needs to hear it.
Let me say this. Thank you, Tracy, and I love you being on the team with you. It's incredibly humbling. We get to co-host here. We get to lead. You'll be on stage multiple times in 2025. You partner with John. A lot of things we do together, but I love co-leading and co-learning with you. It's my favorite thing. Let me go back to this, and then you can move us. But let me go back to, and I will butcher this quote and who made the quote, but it's in my life plan this year on the idea of stand. Having done everything to stand, stay standing on what you know. John says, the older he gets, the less certain he is about more things, but the more certain he is about a few things. And so that's kind of the concept that's driving stand. I am very confident on several things, and I'm going to stand on those in the midst of all the uncertainty. One of the quotes that really struck me, I'd never heard this quote before. I can't tell you who it is, even though it's in my life plan, and I can't quote it exactly right now, but I will come back to a podcast and give it to you exact. Here's the quote in essence. When a leader makes a decision, good or bad, she becomes a light. Now think about that. You know what a lighthouse is for? It's not to say, welcome home, come see me. It's to say, get the heck off of this place because you're getting ready to run into the shore. And we love lighthouses, but lighthouses is telling us where not to go, not where to go. And I've worked with some leaders that I was certain of their decisions, and it showed me what not to do in my leadership going forward. Don't despise decision making. Just use it as a light to shed insight or a light to reject direction. But take it as a gift, because he or she that makes a decision is casting a light.
So good. So good. I know somebody needed to hear that. It's just so good for me to hear it, and just appreciating the decision John Maxwell made in having you sit in the chair that you sit in, and that you get to be on this podcast and sharing what you share with all of us. I know I learn from you each time we sit together and learn together. So prioritizing decision making, he gives three. He talks about 3 points, comparing payoff. He gives how to put his schedule together. He says, then he talks about considering your goals and how you go through those 3 points, and then how to delegate. Now we have really landed on that first part, which I think was important. I would like to 1 and 2 kind of go together. It's prioritizing and then considering those priorities as you consider your goals. So first of all, when he talks about on a scale of 1 to 3, making the list of things that you have to do and saying what's most important, somewhat important, and least important. How often do you do that, Mark? And what does that look like in your day-to-day?
Unapologetically, I do it every single year. What's most important, what's somewhat important, what's least important. I look at what I treated as important in the previous year, and I reflect and say, did I get that one right? And did I nail it? Did I accomplish it with the focus? And then if not, and it's a high importance, then I put there, if I didn't accomplish it or did accomplish it, it was the least important, it didn't give me the return, I learn from it and make a decision for what's going to be prioritized in 2024. So I am relentless, ruthless, if you will, about doing that at year end. What I am not as good at is doing it on a monthly basis, and I believe a leader should do it on a monthly basis as it relates to business plans, life plans, and ambitious goals for a given year. Well, having said that, I, just like John talked about, I start every day looking at my calendar and saying, what is the most important thing of today? It's where John has trained us to say, where do I have to be 100% today? Where can I be 90? Where can I be 50? Where can I be 20 and somebody else be the other 100? And I identify that in the morning every single day. What I also do, and John does this as well, he didn't cover it in the lesson today, at the end of the day, I grade myself. Did I get that right? Did I guess the right thing was the most important thing? And what did I do with the most important thing? And how can I learn from it?
Yeah, I love that. And can I just say that could be to our parents out there, this is something that way ahead of schedule. You can teach this to your kids. This can be taught to kids where they make a list. You teach them to make a list of what they have to do and then highlight with a highlighter pen the things that absolutely have to be done, because the things that we keep in our head feel way more stressful. But if we can write them down or put them on their phone, teach them to make lists each day, we're going to deal with a lot less stress cases in kids, but we're teaching them something. We're teaching them to do something, and they need to see us do it. So by all means, model it as well. But we need to teach them to do something that will carry through into their adulthood, into their professional lives and their personal lives, that will help them organize their thoughts and their minds, which will help them sleep better, which will help them be more productive, both in their personal lives and their professional lives. And if we can teach this to kids young, imagine how productive they will be and less frenetic they will be. So by all means, teach that. I teach my kids, make a list. I give them notepads. And then I have them highlight the things that absolutely need to be done first, and then teaching them to do the same thing. Look at their calendar at the beginning of the day, looking at the end, and they're way less apt to forget something, miss a meeting, miss being on time somewhere. So I just wanted to put that in there because, I always like to put in something to do with parenting.
Love that.
Lastly, delegating. Delegating, I believe the mark of a great leader is someone who knows how to delegate. One of the first things I learned from John as a 20-something was staff your weaknesses. And for me, that was just learning very early on to do the things that I am really good at doing, know the things I'm good at doing and what bring the return and what's required of me and where I need to show up the best, but also learn to delegate to someone who is great at something I'm terrible at, that enjoys something I don't enjoy doing. And that has to do with our team. How good are you, Mark, at delegating? Is that something? Talk to our people who are hold everything, kind of control freaks, which is kind of also the mark of a leader. And talk to them about how you developed as a delegator and what that kind of looks like.
Well, for me, number one, I feel there's a big difference between delegating and just kind of dumping on somebody. I believe there's a difference. I look at delegating, and I know John talked about it here as delegate. I really work hard for me to make a distinction between delegate and empower. I think delegating a lot of times is misused by leaders. They give tasks that they don't want to focus on. They give tasks that there's not enough resources and they hope there's a miracle worker that gets it. Or they give tasks because they don't really believe in the task in the first place. Most leaders are like me. They hold on to the things they're certain of, they love, the things that gives them great fulfillment.
Yes.
I think a great leader delegates from a place of empowerment. I love to delegate to somebody something that they can do about 80% as good as I, and then watch them outgrow anything that I can do or have ever done. And I think empowerment is more about giving things that I believe in and giving things that I am willing to resource and giving things that I am willing to serve the leader while they make it successful. And if I can get those 3 things down pat, I think I have, to use John's word in this lesson, I think I have delegated well. Again, I call that empowerment. But I feel like I have empowered well. If I give somebody something that I really am passionate about, I could do it very much. Thank you very much. I give people something that I am willing to put my money behind it. I'm ready to resource it, and I'm willing to stay engaged. To me, that is empowerment. But now let's go, because there's a big tool that John has given us right here. It's actually in Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. For those of you that don't have that book, he does a whole chapter on developing the leader within you is about prioritizing. And in that prioritizing section, he talks about the 3 R's that's in your notes today. We'll put that in the show notes. We'll give you a 15% discount on both, on 21 Laws of Leadership and on Developing the Leader Within You. But let me finish this right here. I think for all of us that are feeling like we're strapped with responsibility that we do not want, or that we are holding people around us back from leading like they would like to, I believe that you need to go work through this exercise of what's required of you, what gives you the greatest return, what is rewarding to you. I believe that exercise of identifying those 3 things and then looking for ways to delegate with empowerment off of those things will make a difference for you.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.